welcome to Mrs. Harrington's art class. Today we are going to be making an Alexander Calder Stabile that looks either like this if you have paper at home. If you have colored paper at home, you can add a little bit of color to your stabile, which is what he called his sculptures that appeared to move with organic shapes but didn't actually move. So what you're going to do first is get a piece of paper. I like to grab some printer paper because that's what I have around the house. You will need a pencil of some sort or drawing crayon, that works as well. And you will need a pair of scissors, and that is it. If you were lucky to have colored paper, I actually typically use like scraps, things that I have left over from previous projects. And if you don't have colored paper, I like to use, I'm going to probably show you how to use this with the purple and the yellow. And Alexander Calder really liked to take a look at organic shapes, kind of following nature. It's not very geometric. And we're going to draw 3 shapes of equal size on our paper, keeping it very simple. And because I know you're having a hard time seeing that, I'm going to switch over to a darker pencil just so you can see it. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and trace the outline of my shape, and then maybe I'll have a shape like this for my base. Keep it very interesting. And then I'm going to have another shape that I might have a point on it, and I maybe like something that looks like this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm working with a half sheet of paper. I find that when you make them small, it gives the shape a little bit of an interesting look to it. Now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut those shapes out, being careful to stay on the line. Now if you're at home and you just want to experiment with other shapes, maybe with other pieces of paper, or experiment making different sized stabiles and then putting them together, that kind of is a lot of fun too. You can get your own little sculpture garden if you do that. And I'm going to cut as close as I can to the edge. And there's my first shape. If at any time you need to pause this video in order for you to complete a step, please do so. It is a lot of fun. I love doing these, especially when I learn the trick of how to get them to stay together. So I will be showing you that as soon as I get this last piece cut out. And I'm going to go ahead and cut my piece. You know, you're going to have a lot of scraps of paper, that's all right. I usually save them for other projects. You'd be surprised what you can reuse paper for. Okay. Now, if you do not have colored paper, this would be a great opportunity for you to go in and maybe add a little color to it. Make sure they're nice and solid. And I can do that right now. Maybe this one will have dots. Maybe this one I can do stripes on. Nice bold stripes. And I'll do that the whole thing, just to have a little bit of color. That's only if you don't have colored paper. If you have like construction paper at home or cardstock, this actually works out really well. And just to be interesting, I'm going to trace the bottom of my lines. There you go, just to change things up. And then I'm going to switch colors. I like to use different shapes, and maybe on this one I will do spiral on it. Now with these sculptures, you're going to see both sides. So if you choose to go back and add color, you might want to do that with the other side too. I'm not going to color my other side because I want to show you how to cut your paper so that you can get it to stand just like this piece of printer paper standing all by itself. For now, I'm going to turn these over so that you can see the backs of these. I think I'm going to keep this one as the base of my sculpture. So that means that my sculpture will probably be sitting on top of this piece right here, and even my camera angle is so you can see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut slits into my single piece. I'm not going to cut it all the way through though, because that's where I'm going to slide this piece in, because I want it to stand up. I'm also going to do the same here. I'm going to turn it over so it's easier for you to see. I'm going to create a couple slits here. That should be enough distance. And what I'm going to do is, with those slits, I'm going to slide them in together. Now it takes a little bit of figuring out which side's which. I'm actually going to have my colors facing this way. There you go. Ah, too far. There we go. And there we go. And now you'll see, oops, too far. I've got, kind of looks a little like a moving picture, but then I have this one here. And now I'm going to decide I'd like to get some height on my sculpture. I'm wondering if I could cross these two. I'll do it this way so you can see. Cross these two across the top to give some depth. So again, like before, I'm just going to do a slit, maybe no more than halfway. And then I want it to fit in here and here. So without cutting the back, I'm going to do just a very tiny slit here and a tiny slit here. And I'm going to slide these in together. I'm going to use those slits to slide into my sculpture so that both pieces fit. And now I have my Alexander Calder Stabile, and it will stand up for us. And what's nice about these is if you add color to it and you turn it on either side, you can see the decoration come through. Now if this is yours and you're comfortable doing it, you could color the backs of all these pieces and then reassemble it again. I'm going to leave it like this because I'm going to show you another sculpture. And I just did this one real quickly. Okay, remember Alexander Calder wanted to work with organic shapes. And the next one I'm going to do, I'm going to use a purple and a yellow. They're nice colors. Alexander Calder really enjoyed the look of the complementary colors. He loved red, he loved yellow, and he loved using black. And I'm going to cut these in half because I want to make sure I can use the rest of it for other projects if I'd like to at a later time. So this time I have two pieces of paper. I'd like to, whoops, wrong direction so you can see me. I would like to come up with something kind of unique and a little bit more complex. What I like to do when I'm doing my own examples is I will sometimes just cut and see what shapes come out. So one of the shapes that I was having fun with earlier when I was doing this, I was just making these big, long kind of arches that kind of look like this. These nice big arches. I was thinking this would be a good base for my sculpture. And what I invite you to do is, and this is actually a good rule of thumb when you're figuring out where to cut, you notice they're about the same size. You want to cut about halfway. That way when they slide together, they kind of lock into place. So to do this, I'm going to cut the bottom of this one about halfway, and then I'm going to be cutting the top of the other one. Do this side. So when I slide them together, and again it takes a little wiggling to get it to work, There we go. Even for me, it takes a little bit of work to get it to stay. Now you'll see it didn't go all the way through. I'm realizing that I didn't cut my yellow deep enough, so I'm going to have to go back in and cut just a little bit more to make it nice and tight to stand up. And now I have a shape that will stand up on its own. Alexander Calder also liked using a variety of shapes, so I kept these kind of the same. This is where I get to be a little bit more interesting. I'm going to cut a very large piece that'll stick off the top. Kind of like a big fin. Maybe like a rounded heart almost. Now I'm going to have this sit off the top. Maybe I'll make it a little bit smaller. Nah, I'll leave it like this. Okay, I'm going to put it right about here. And so I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Keep it pretty low. So now this time, I'm going to have this vertical piece stand up. This piece will also help brace my triangles from folding over on itself. I'm going to slide them in just like I did before. And you should be able to get a nice, if it will stay for me. There we go. Okay, now it's standing up. Okay, so very interesting shape. Took a little working, that's okay. Now I'm going to do a nice long strip, and I'm going to cut the points off my original shape, and I'm going to do these long strips. I'm going to do 2 of them actually. By the way, I have no plan. I'm making this up as I go along because I'm trying to make the movement of the actual piece. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I would like to put something here to show depth. And so I'm going to take my yellow pieces and cut on the sides, and I'm going to add 2 little slits here. What I'm going to suggest is that you figure out really what works for you. You might find that by cutting the slits in the paper, you might find you're able to get other shapes to stay, which you in the past might not have been able to. So experiment, that's what this is about. Cutting those slits in the paper, you'll realize that you can make it stand up on its own, just like that. Okay, so now for my secondary piece, I was thinking maybe I would just go straight in this way. Maybe this way. Now this one, because I want it to be on an angle, I actually need to cut my pieces on an angle, which is actually kind of tricky. So if you want to cut your pieces on an angle, I'm going to rotate this by so you can see it. If I want it to go in sideways, my slits need to be in sideways. There you go. You'll see that they're slightly on an angle, kind of pointing down into the actual center of the base down here. You can't see it down here. All right, and so I'm going to cut, again, slits only halfway through my piece. We'll do 1 here. Oops. There's 1. Now, Alexander Calder would have been using large sheets of steel, so his would not have as been forgiving as some paper would have been. And so now I have my Alexander Calder Stabile that seems to be staying at the moment, which is wonderful. And you can do this with notebook paper, you can do this with printer paper. If all you have is, if all you have is printer paper, it works beautifully. So there you go. There's our Alexander Calder Stabile. Okay, maybe I can hold it up this way for you easier. And there we go. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with your creativity and your ideas of how you could design your own. And I invite you to be creative.